Good morning to all of you. My name is Arun Balachandran, and I would be taking you through the session of SQL Server Basic. So, a little introduction about myself. I have been into corporate training and consulting for last from 2002. So, last almost 18 plus 24 years, 22 years. So, that is my introduction. And I have been into the area of languages like C, C++, C Sharp, .NET Framework. I've also done certain trainings on SharePoint, which is a portal. And majorly, my area has been SQL Server and SQL Server data analytics. So SQL Server development, which is what we are going to do now. I've been working on it, all the versions, starting from version 2007. So SQL Server SQL Server 2000, in fact, I started working with, and now up till now. So that is my introduction with respect to development. I've also done consulting with respect to analysis in SQL Server and reporting in SQL Server. Also movement of data, like you have ETL tool like SSIS, and SSIS, which is an analytical tool, and SSRS, which is a reporting tool. Of course, now we do also have the cloud version of the same. So this is my brief introduction. Now we are going to see the coverage that we are planning to have here. The objective is people who are completely new to SQL, introduce them to what is SQL, and give them some basic T-SQL features. So T-SQL is a language used by SQL when you're writing code or when you're creating a database application. So this entry profile will be people who are completely new to SQL Server, or people also who have some basic knowledge on tools like Excel, which share data or store data basically. And the methodology will be, we will have some theory sessions. Certain theory sessions will be there. And certain sessions will have both theory and demo. So we are planning a 22-hour session for the complete month. So 1 month, 22 hours will be the session. What are we planning to cover? So one request or requirement would be, if you can possibly install SQL Server in your laptop, it will be easy. You just need the development version of it. And once I start, I would be giving certain databases to you, and you would be using the databases to understand the ideas that are going to be shared in this training. So the training duration I have told 22 hours. The time is 8:30 to 9:30. So don't worry about the suggested time. It is 8:30 to 9:30 that we are talking about in the morning, India time. Now, what are the coverages? So first, we will introduce you to SQL Server logical architecture. So first, we will talk about a little about what is data and how data moves, so that you have an idea what I am getting into. And data has become very important because we have now data science, and many people are going for data science. As such, data is very important. So therefore, I will start with how the data flows usually in any company or any business. And then we will start with what are the ways in which I understand the business and convert them into data, which means tables, etc. That will be a very brief session when we are doing the demo. Then the main session starts with SQL Server logical architecture, where we will talk about the tool called SQL Server. And in that tool, we will give understanding of various components that you see, like your SQL Server instance, SQL Server objects, database objects, authentication. And I'll also introduce you to the user interface, which is called the SQL Server Management Studio, and how to use the Management Studio to write your code as well as to browse different components of SQL Server. This will be the first session. The second session would be called table design. So it will be 3 sessions, so 3 hours. And here, once the table gets created, we will see the flow now. So you will understand once the table gets created, how do I implement that in my SQL Server? So creating tables. So we'll be talking about data types. We'll be talking about different keys, which is otherwise called integrity, constraint. Data constraint is through data types, and certain business rules which we will implement, check constraints. So that we will be talking about. So this is how we complete the table design. So by the end of this module, you will know how to create your tables and how to add rules to the tables, how to relate two tables, two or more tables. So this you will come to know. So once this is over, your table design is ready. And then we come to understanding the language called T-SQL. So T-SQL, we are going to see in two ways T-SQL language. One is called as the DDL and the other one is called DML. So DML is data manipulation language. DDL is data definition language. So we would be creating some tables, etc. using the designer. But we also can create using the code. So the language used is T-SQL. And if T-SQL language is used for creating tables, etc., it is called DDL. If it is used for inserting data, it is called DML. And this part we will cover. So that will be around 2 classes. By the end of this, you will know how to write code to insert, update, and delete the data into SQL using the code. You will also be knowing how to create tables and how to create, update, or add new columns with different data types, add keys, and add constraints in the form of business rules using T-SQL as a language. So you would be familiar with it. Once we complete this module, we go to the next module. So we have inserted the data into SQL Server, which is a database engine. It is a relational database engine. So we will look at the SQL Query Basics. And in SQL Query Basics, what is it that we are planning to cover? So we have seen how to insert the data. Now the data that is inserted, I want to query. So we will be looking at how to write basic select clauses, how to use from clause, how do we filter raw data using where clause, how do we group, what is grouping, what is aggregation of data. So this we will cover. This will take around 3 sessions. So by the end of this, we will know how to query one table. And from that table, how do I filter the data that I want to see in my output? How do I summarize the data that is available? So there are certain data which can be summarized, especially like cost, revenue. So these can be summarized. So how do I aggregate the data and what do we mean by grouping? So this part we will be covering. Then once this is over, so this is your basic querying. So this is a must to know for everybody. Then this is again the other part of the query, which is called joins, where now we will be talking about how to find or how to query the data from more than 2 tables or more than 1 table, in fact. So one and more than 1 table. 1 table we have already seen in basic, more than 1 table we'll see in joins. We'll see how can we join the 2 tables. So we have different types of joins, like cross join, inner join, outer join, a full join. So we will see these joins, and we will not only see the joins, we will also see scenarios where the joins are going to be utilized. So this is your SQL Server joins. It's around 3 sessions. So by the end of the SQL Query Basic and SQL Server join, you will know how to write a decent query. Now, apart from joins, there is another mechanism to retrieve data, which is called subquery. And we will see how to write those subqueries. So subquery, as the name suggests, is query, writing a query inside query. And most of the time when you see a complex query, you will see the subquery. You will see a query inside query, and not at one level. You will see a query inside a query inside a query. So you will have multiple levels. You should know how to understand the query inside the query. So you should be comfortable with it. So we'll see how to write subqueries. We'll see how to use subqueries in different clauses like select clause, from clause, where clause. So from class subqueries are called derived tables. Then we will also see correlated subqueries. Correlated subqueries is also something that we will be talking about. Now, so this part is what we are looking at. At the end of this 2 hours, we would have completed module 1, module 2, and module 3. After these 3 modules, we would know how to write good queries in SQL Server. Of course, there are many other kinds of, you can say, features available when querying the data, but those come under advanced. So that I won't be covering as part of basic. Once this part is over, then we move on to T-SQL syntaxes. So there are certain, you can say, certain features available as part of T-SQL languages. And those features make up the language structure. So there is a T-SQL language, and the language is having a structure. So these features make the language structure. When you are creating procedures, procedure means a set of statements that are going to execute certain business functions like withdrawing cash, depositing cash, as far as bank is concerned, making a purchase. If you go to Amazon online, making a purchase. So these things, the logic can be written in a small structure, programmatic structure, and that structure is called stored procedure, and that is present in SQL Server. So we'll be looking at it. We'll be looking at cursors, which is part of stored procedure, will be taken as part of stored procedure, and functions. So by the end of this module, you will know how to write a stored procedure when some business gives you a simple logic to implement in the database. That does not require your application. So, and when do you create functions? So functions are basically used when calculations get complex and you want to encapsulate them inside a function. So we will look at how to create functions. And it is a procedural way of creating functions. So there is no object orientation involved in here. So we will look at other part of the languages like variables, then structures like if else, selection, looping, then stored procedures in terms of in parameter, out parameter, and return type. How do we create then cursors and functions? So this is what we do. So by the end of this module, you will know how to create a small procedure, and we'll also know how to handle exceptions if there are any. So that's not mentioned here. We will also give information on exception handling. Then we go to the last module of this basic program. In this module, we are going to show how to implement certain business rules using triggers, where I have a rule or I have a requirement where from one table, I need to go to another table and do certain work. Like there is one table where I am updating my account balance. There is another table where I am doing my transaction. So when I withdraw money, it will show up in the transaction table, but I have to go and update the balance of the account. So I have to go across tables. Like this, there are various scenarios where I have to implement rules, and these rules are implemented using triggers. So by the end of this, we will understand how to create a little complex business rules against the data. So I can give you some examples of business rules. I am in the bank and I am withdrawing money. If I can withdraw only up to 25,000 rupees a day from the ATM or the bank. So the 25,000 is a business rule. So you should not allow a person to withdraw more than 25,000 from the ATM. How do I ensure this rule? How do we implement this rule at the backend database? This we will come to understand. So data is there. You learn how to query data. You learn how to process data by inserting, updating, and deleting, using statements and using stored procedures, cursors, and then how to have complex functions and calculations using functions. Then we will see how to implement rules. Lastly, we will see how to create views. Views restrict what a person sees. So a person, all people will not be allowed to see all of the data. Like if I take an example of bank, the branch manager of branch 1 should not be allowed to see details of branch 2, not required. So therefore, I need to conceal that. That kind of security has to be applied, and their views come into picture. And views also give you customized data. You don't want to see the complete table at the back end. You want customized data. There also we will look at the views. So at the end of this, you will know how to implement basic rules with a little complex scenario using triggers. And then we'll also see how to secure the data and give a customized perception of the data to the customers. This is what we are planning to cover in 22 hours. Okay. So this is the program. Today we will start with understanding what is data. That is the next module for the next 15 minutes. But before we do that, I would like to suggest, this is the, I hope, let me put it in the chat. So Bhaskar Madhav has put this URL in the chat. Those who are interested in the program to know when the program is going to start. This is a demo session, and what would be the cost. For further inquiries on the program, please click on the URL that is given here. So Madhav, everybody can see this URL?
Yes, sir.
Okay, should I also share, or this is enough?
Yeah, you can also share that, sir.
Okay, so let me also share this to everyone. Chat. So this is the URL that I also have shared. So click on this URL if you are interested in this training, and also further inquiries you can do with Madhav. Now let us come to the first portion of this training. Before getting into SQL Server, we have to understand how data is treated as far as business is concerned. So we are going to go through certain understanding, and then we will move on with SQL Server. So first we have to understand how the data is used. So now there are two ways in which data is used. The first is called as a system, which is used mainly for transaction. To give you an example, you have Decathlon. Decathlon is a chain of store. You have Reliance Fresh. Like that, you have many chains of stores. There is some data getting into the system when you are purchasing from the store. In that case, the database system is mainly utilized for inserting data during the business transaction. You go to the billing counter, you have purchased something, you give it to the billing counter, and the billing counter gives you the bill and enters all your information into the database. A system which is mainly focused on entering business data is called the OLTP system. The full form being Online Transaction Processing System. Now, how will the online transaction processing system be? What would be its characteristics? So typically, you can have data stored in any format. So this is my application, and this is the data in which the application, or this is the you can say the database server or some kind of data store where the application is storing the data. You have Excel, Notepad, then you have databases like SQL, Access. You can take many examples. So this will store the transactional data. So you have this transactional data. And when I say transactional data, what does it mean? It is mainly focused on inserting information, updating information, or deleting information. You typically go to a store and you purchase. So you insert, when a purchase happens, you insert some data. Then you want to make some changes in the purchase, you update. You want to cancel the purchase, you delete. So insert, update, delete. So this is the characteristics of the data that we talk about in the OLTP system. Now, how is this OLTP system going to be there in what form? It is going to be in the form of Excel, Notepad, or DB. DB or databases, you can take Oracle, SQL, and you can even say Access. Access is a desktop database. So for big applications, which I'm talking about, it usually will be SQL Server database. Okay. Now, the second thing, this data, because it is mainly used for the purpose of insert, update, delete, will be deduplicated data. That means there will be no duplication of the data. Because if there is duplication, what will happen? Suppose a customer's name is present in two places. If there is an update of customer name, then the customer name has to be updated in more than one place. So two places. If one place it gets updated, if the other place updation does not happen, there will be inconsistency. You don't want that inconsistency, therefore normalize. It is called normalized. When you deduplicate the data which is deduplicated is called normalized form. Then you have other formats, different formats of database or data can be there. So Excel is one format, Notepad is another format, DB. So why 3? Because it depends. So it's a medium level company, it will use Excel. A very, very basic company, it cannot afford licenses of databases, it will use Notepad. If it is a big company, it can afford database licenses, it will use a database. So it depends on the business. So small businesses, medium businesses, big businesses. Then they also will have frequently changing insert, update, delete. So frequently changing, that is another nature. Then there is a technique to model this data. Model this data means what? The business will tell you that this is the data, you please convert it into tables. So the first step is called modeling. We will look at this more in detail in the next class. So modeling. And then data may be dirty, possible. Suppose you are entering the data, the person who is entering the data entry operator can make mistakes. A dirty data is possible. There can be a possibility of duplicate entries as well. So these become the basic nature of the data that is present in the OLTP database system. So now the business, what is the main purpose of OLTP database? Whatever business I conduct, the information about the business should get into the database. That is my main purpose. I am not bothered about the trend, analysis, querying. It's just insert the data so that tomorrow it is further available for me to get the data, analyze and give the output. So if you carefully notice, this is my OLTP data. And then this OLTP data has to be moved on to the next system, which is called OLAP. So business is not only interested in inserting the data, business is interested in analyzing the data so that the future it can understand what action should I take. So what kind of nature of data is it? It is going to be analytical data. So it will be mostly consolidation analysis, which will be consolidation based, and analysis, which is predictive based. In fact, now AI has come. So this is a very important aspect of data science, where you are able to predict what is going to be the data pattern based on existing data. So this is the analytics part of it. That system is called as OLAP system, Online Analytical Processing System. The data will be opposite of the transaction processing because this is mainly used for query. So I have to query the data and analyze the data. Whereas here I had only to put the data inside. Here I have to get the data out. So this is for getting the data out. Now the data will be in denormalized form. That means there will be some duplication. Why? Because here I am not going to look at consistency. Here I am more focused on querying the data. This particular system, which is OLTP system, I am interested in deduplication because I don't want any inconsistency. But here I am mainly using it for query, and therefore denormalized form. And the formats are regularized or normalized. Means what? I may get data from various locations in either Excel, Notepad, or DB. Same business data can be in different systems. Suppose it's a very small store, let's say in a village. I as a business cannot afford to give a database for it. I will give Notepad. So I have an application which will store the data in Notepad. here Excel, here it will be SQL database. So I can have the same business storing the data in different formats. So I have to regularize the formats. Okay. Then, as we said, it is going to be more querying and very less updation. And what modeling is used? Modeling means what? How do I visualize the data? That is called modeling. Like if you have a big house, you really can't see how the house will look unless and until they create a smaller model. So the model is for understanding how it will look when it is actually implemented. So UDM. So you have ER modeling here. Here you have UDM modeling. The data has to be clean. Otherwise, my analysis will be wrong. So the data has to be clean. And the data should not have any duplicate entry. So there should be no duplicates. Otherwise, it will give me wrong information again. So therefore, this is the entire crux of how the data moves in business. But it is not enough if I have data which is analyzed. It has to be presented. So there has to be some reporting tool. And the reporting tool not only presents the data which is analyzed, it also presents the data which is inserted. So this is the reporting tool that will do that for me. Now, between OLTP and OLAP, there has to be certain operations that I need to do on the data. And that is called ETL operation, extract, transform, and load operation. So you have tools like SSIS, you have tools like Informatica, then you have tools which are online now, like for example, ADF, Azure Data Factory, right? ADB, Azure Data Bricks. These are tools which will do the work of changing, because it has to move the data from the transactional source to the analytical source. So it has to change the data types if required, change the data formats, remove duplicates, remove dirty data, and denormalize the data. So it has to do a lot of work in here. That is why ETL is important. It extracts from this system and it will push it to this system. And then you analyze the data. So this is how the entire flow of data works. The only difference between what was there before and now is, before it was predominantly done by services and applications which are in a particular system, which is called offline or on-premise. But now you have services on cloud which will do the same operation. So this operation has not changed. So this part we have to be clear. So first is I store the data, then I move the data to the analytical portion, and in the analytical portion, I cull out all the information that is required for it. This is the entire flow that we look at. So with this, we will end today. So we are in 8:58. So this is the first demo session. Again, I would like to remind you, in case you are, whenever you want to know more about this particular session, please do go to this link and click on this link. So the demo session will continue tomorrow also. So we'll continue from that. So any questions by any participants? So I keep a couple of minutes for that.